I think it's safe to say that change is on my agenda. Change for good. And I embrace that and I enjoy that change. I don't fear it.
A bombshell announcement from the heart of Windsor has sent shockwaves across Britain. Queen Camilla has been permanently stripped of all her authorities within the royal council by Prince William himself. The decision was swift, ice-cold, and uncompromising, catching the palace completely off guard, as if a verdict had already been sealed long in advance. According to leaked sources, the crisis began unfolding about 2 weeks ago, when Camilla was accused of quietly orchestrating a campaign to undermine the position of the Princess of Wales, Catherine. What started as seemingly minor incidents, altered official profiles and diminished public roles, gradually revealed a calculated effort. Tensions between the two women had been simmering for some time. Catherine has won widespread public affection with her modern, warm, and approachable image, while Camilla's more assertive and controversial style of wielding influence has long drawn criticism. Yet even as questions mounted, Camilla has firmly denied any wrongdoing. Meanwhile, William, who had remained silent and observant, quietly launched his own investigation and uncovered a series of deliberate actions directed at his wife. This time, he chose not to stand on the sidelines. Insiders say he is determined to ensure that the painful history his mother endured will never be repeated with Catherine, at any cost. The central questions now gripping the palace. What exactly did William discover that prompted such a ruthless response? And what secret is Camilla so determined to protect that she refuses to admit anything, even after losing everything? Inside the solid stone walls of Buckingham Palace, a single command had just been issued with enough force to shake the very foundations of the ancient monarchy. Prince William, now bearing the immense weight of the nation on his shoulders, while his father, the king, lay ill, had taken a step that no modern heir had ever dared. He permanently stripped Queen Camilla of all her powers within the royal council. The announcement came without flowery explanations or elaborate ceremonies. It was short, steel-hard, and ice-cold, like a sword slicing through the final thread, connecting his father's wife to the center of Windsor power. The seismic event unfolded at a particularly sensitive moment, as King Charles III's health had taken a sharp turn for the worse since late 2025. In the vast power vacuum that followed, the cracks long hidden beneath protocol began to split open into deep chasms. When the official notice was posted on the palace bulletin board and sent to the press, a heavy silence fell over the corridors of Sandringham and Windsor. Courtiers, accustomed to unspoken rules, suddenly found themselves caught in a war whose outcome had already been decided by the prince's suppressed fury. Without any prior warning or backroom negotiations, William's action delivered a direct, devastating blow to Camilla's political standing. In William's mind at that moment, Queen Camilla was no longer the woman who stood beside his father, but a shadow silently enveloping Catherine's life. He recalled the strange changes in his wife over the past 2 weeks. The once radiant Catherine had grown quiet and withdrawn, her eyes clouded with anxiety whenever she held those tampered personnel files. William was not an impulsive man, but he was a keen observer. Every small detail, from Catherine's longtime assistants suddenly resigning for personal reasons to Camilla's unusual silence at family dinners, had woven itself into a clear picture of betrayal. The shock extended far beyond administrative power. Stripping her of her seat on the royal council meant Camilla was now excluded from every major decision of state should the king become unable to fulfill his duties. It was a direct strike at the pride and ambition she had meticulously built over decades. The public began to whisper, and tabloids screamed headlines about a civil war inside the palace. But in reality, this was a calculated purge to protect what mattered most for the future. William understood the price of his decision. He knew he would face questioning from traditionalists, and perhaps even the pained gaze of his father from his sickbed. Yet every time he saw the signs of isolation Catherine had endured, all hesitation vanished. To William, the crown might be important, but the safety and dignity of his wife, the woman who had stood by him through the hardest years, would always come first. This event was not merely an administrative move. It was the opening explosion in a series of dark truths about to be revealed. Palace insiders had begun quietly passing word of a blacklist Camilla had secretly compiled, where Catherine's name had been crossed out like a symbolic erasure. William's rage was not only aimed at the bureaucratic actions, but at the cruelty lurking behind his stepmother's diplomatic smiles. As the first day of the earthquake drew to a close and the palace lights gradually dimmed, William's silhouette could be seen standing by the window, staring out at the empty square. He knew none of this had happened by chance. It had all begun with a calculated, insidious plot exactly 2 weeks earlier, when a crucial document vanished from Catherine's desk, the opening move in a ruthless campaign of erasure orchestrated by Camilla. Today's shock was only the visible tip of an iceberg filled with schemes and betrayal deep within the British royal family. After the earthquake triggered by Prince William's declaration, the atmosphere inside the palace did not ease. Instead, it thickened with unbearable tension. The truth began to surface through the smallest details in administrative files. In the royal world, a person's existence was not only defined by their public appearances, but also by every line of text in official documents. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, who led numerous charitable organizations and served as the soul of major cultural campaigns, suddenly found her name being quietly omitted from internal records sent to the Royal Council. In documents outlining the order of precedence for upcoming commemorative events, the position once reserved for Catherine was left blank or replaced with vague phrases such as representative of the prince's office. To outsiders, it might have looked like a simple typing error, but to those familiar with court protocol, it was a cruel punishment. It was like removing a single foundational brick to bring down an entire edifice of reputation. With the king's health declining, Camilla's growing control had allowed her to begin a subtle campaign of erasure. In the discreet offices, Catherine started to feel a spreading chill from those who had once been under her command. Whenever she requested work reports, she was met with evasive eyes and hesitant replies about files being updated according to new directives. Her emotions swung from shock and confusion to a deep, lingering pain. She realized that the public's love, her greatest strength, had become a thorn in the side of her powerful mother-in-law. The stark difference in lifestyles between the two leading women of the royal family had become an unbridgeable chasm. While Catherine embodied a modern, approachable monarchy through her sincerity and occasional human vulnerability, Camilla represented an outdated style of dominance where power was measured by absolute control and obedience. Camilla felt threatened by the natural radiance that surrounded Catherine. Every smiling photograph of her daughter-in-law in the press served as a painful reminder of the unshakable place Catherine held in the hearts of the people. Something Camilla had fought her entire life to achieve, but had never fully attained. The peak of this symbolic erasure occurred during a review of royal decrees concerning the management of artistic heritage. Catherine had been directly responsible for these programs, yet in the final draft submitted, her role was completely removed and replaced by direct oversight from the Queen's office. This was no longer a mere administrative reshuffle. It was a silent declaration of war. Catherine did not respond with outbursts or public anger. Her reaction was quiet observation, but inside her, a storm was brewing. She stood before the mirror, adjusting a brooch, a cherished keepsake, and felt the isolation closing in around her. The rooms she walked through seemed larger, quieter, and her presence appeared to be fading in the eyes of those who always knew which way the wind of power was blowing. The simmering conflict began to reveal itself through Camilla's sharp glances during closed-door meetings. She never criticized Catherine directly, but by steering conversations, she made Catherine's opinions seem irrelevant and easily dismissed. These deliberate moves created a heavy psychological burden on the woman who was still trying to preserve family harmony. Catherine stood on the balcony, looking down at the palace courtyard where the guards continued their unchanging rhythmic march. She understood that part of that very rhythm was trying to eliminate her. The signs of erasure were no longer speculation. They had become a brutal reality, slowly pushing her into a fight for survival at the heart of the royal family, where having one's name crossed out could mean the denial of an entire life. The isolation did not arrive like a sudden storm. It seeped into every corner like frost, slowly withering every support Catherine had painstakingly built. It began with the familiar faces. One by one, her private secretaries who knew her daily routines, the media assistants who had stood beside her through countless public scandals. All were quietly transferred or forced to leave under vague excuses. Catherine stood in the vast hallway, watching the boxes of documents being carried away, feeling as though the protective pieces of her life were being stripped from their frame. She understood that dismantling her support system was Camilla's way of taking away her eyes and ears, turning her into a solitary island in the middle of a palace teeming with her opponent's spies. The control extended its tentacles even to the most tangible symbols of power, the royal jewels. In the world of monarchies, jewelry was more than adornment. It was the language of status. When Catherine requested her familiar pieces for medium-profile events, she repeatedly received polite but pointed refusals from the keeper of the royal collection, a position now filled by one of Camilla's trusted allies. The reasons were always the same: under maintenance, or already assigned by Her Majesty for other purposes. Restricting Catherine's access to symbols like tiaras and valuable pearl necklaces was not merely about thrift. It was a silent message sent to the entire aristocracy. This woman's radiance was being revoked. Catherine's mind fell into a state of extreme tension. She realized she was being held captive in an invisible glass cage. Every step she took, every outfit she chose, was scrutinized and adjusted. The natural confidence of a modern woman was gradually replaced by an almost paranoid caution. She began inspecting every meal, every letter, and even casual greetings, knowing that any small opening would be exploited for attack. Camilla's cruelty reached its peak when unfavorable rumors began leaking outside the palace. Not direct accusations, but vicious whispers about the princess's mental instability or uncooperative attitude. These rumors, spread by unnamed palace insiders, started tarnishing her once perfect public image. Catherine could feel the shift in the eyes around her, a mix of pity and suspicion. Her reputation, the most precious asset she possessed, was being gnawed away by shadows. Camilla observed it all from the position of a patient hunter. She did not need to step forward and argue. She only needed to tighten the noose. Whenever she saw Catherine appear with a tired face or in an outfit lacking its usual brilliance, a discreet, satisfied smile would touch Camilla's lips. For her, pushing Catherine into weakness was not only about consolidating power. It was proof that in this monarchy, Experience and cunning would always outweigh the fleeting affection of the masses. Catherine stood in a dimly lit room, her hand resting on the cold wooden table. Her support network had crumbled. The jewels representing her title had been sealed away, and her reputation was being shaken by gossip. She realized she was no longer a royal fulfilling her duties, but prey surrounded by walls she had once called home. The isolation was complete, leaving behind a fragile Catherine, yet one who was beginning to nurture a fierce will to survive in the darkness. King Charles III's health began to deteriorate, turning discussions about the future of the monarchy from distant speculation into an urgent reality. In the sealed rooms of Sandringham, where daylight filtered only through narrow gaps in the curtains, the king spent most of his time resting, leaving behind a vast and silent power vacuum. This was the moment when the ghosts of ambition rose with the greatest force. Camilla, with the sharp instincts of someone who had spent half her life studying the rules of power, recognized this as her golden opportunity. As the king grew less lucid and physically weaker, unable to handle daily affairs, she wasted no second in expanding her influence. Meetings that once required the king's direct approval were now quietly redirected to the queen's desk under the pretext of easing His Majesty's burden. Step by step, she positioned herself as the sole filter, the only door through which anyone seeking access to the center of power had to pass. In this chess game, Catherine was no longer just a daughter-in-law. She had become a political rival who needed to be completely neutralized. Camilla understood that if Catherine continued to shine and maintain her influence, then when the real moment of power transition arrived, her own position would be overshadowed by the young, vibrant couple of William and Catherine. Therefore, her strategy of pushing to the sidelines was escalated to a new, more ruthless and direct level. Major royal events, from diplomatic receptions to traditional commemorations, began to take place without the Princess of Wales. The explanations offered were smooth and convenient. Sometimes health reasons, other times busy with the children's education plans. In truth, Catherine had been placed in an impossible position. Invitations never reached her hands, or her schedule was deliberately overlapped so she could not attend. Catherine's state of mind during this period was a tangle of exhaustion and suppressed anger. She stood in her study, staring at the empty calendar stripped of important engagements, feeling as though her name was being erased from the family's contemporary history. She felt like a ghost walking through the palace. People still bowed, but their eyes no longer held respect for someone with real authority. The loneliness was no longer just the loss of assistance. It was the loss of a voice. Every time she tried to propose an initiative or contribution to joint activities, Camilla coldly rejected them under the guise of not being appropriate given the king's current condition. This covert power struggle reached its highest tension when Camilla began interfering even in decisions concerning Catherine's children. Controlling access to and the education of the next generation was a direct strike at a mother's heart. Catherine realized that if she remained silent, not only her own position, but also her children's future would be manipulated by the woman temporarily occupying the seat of power. Every evening, when she saw William's exhausted face after long hours at his father's sickbed, Catherine swallowed her tears. She did not want to become a burden to her husband at this time. Yet that very quiet endurance unintentionally cast a heavy, gloomy atmosphere over their small family. As London fog wrapped around the palace towers, the power struggle was no longer petty friction. It had become a full-scale purge. Camilla, outwardly calm but with cold, sharp eyes, had nearly succeeded in removing Catherine from the center of power. However, she had made one critical mistake, underestimating the silent observation of a man who had always considered family his final stronghold. Prince William. While Camilla savored the taste of victory, in another shadowed corner, evidence of her abuse of power was steadily being gathered by determined hands. The tension had reached its breaking point, waiting only for a spark to ignite the explosion. Prince William's silence throughout the stormy months was not weakness, but the calm of a hunter patiently waiting for his prey to fully expose itself. Trained to keep an unchanging expressions through every crisis, William had seen it all. From Catherine's familiar jewels being replaced with lesser pieces to the sudden disappearance of loyal faces in his wife's office. Every trace of exhaustion on Catherine's face felt like a knife to his pride. Yet he understood that emotion alone was not enough to bring down someone as cunning as Camilla. William began a quiet investigation, operating outside the usual intelligence network that had already fallen under the Queen's influence. He drew on personal connections from his military days and trusted contacts within the administrative system to piece together the scattered incidents. In the late nights at Kensington Palace, while Catherine slept restlessly, William sat alone in the darkened study, meticulously comparing unofficial copies of administrative documents he had gathered. What emerged before the prince was a systematic and ruthless plan. He discovered internal memos marked confidential from the Queen's office that explicitly ordered Catherine's name to be removed from major events and instructed archive departments to adjust the record of her contributions. More damningly, William found evidence of financial pressure exerted on the charities Catherine patronized, forcing them to reduce her visibility if they wished to continue receiving support from the royal funds. William's feelings shifted from suspicion to cold fury. He was disgusted by the betrayal within the family, especially while his father lay fighting for his life on a sickbed. Camilla's exploitation of the power vacuum and the king's fragile health to purge her daughter-in-law was not merely an abuse of power. It was a grave insult to the honor of the monarchy William was fighting to protect. Every document, every discreet testimony from dismissed former assistants served as proof of his stepmother's blind ambition. The investigation reached its climax when William obtained concrete evidence that Camilla had personally directed the spread of false rumors about Catherine's mental health to the media. This was the final line crossed. To William, attacking the reputation and psychological well-being of a devoted wife and mother was unforgivable. He no longer saw Camilla as a family member, but as a direct threat to the future stability of the royal house. In the final days of his investigation, William's actions became decisive and razor-sharp. He showed no outward signs, maintaining perfect courtesy during joint appearances, but beneath that polished exterior lay a comprehensive plan for retaliation. He prepared a thick dossier containing every detail: irrational staff transfers, jewelry control records, and dark emails directing media manipulation. Once he had everything in hand, William felt an eerie calm. He stood by the window, gazing toward Buckingham Palace, where Camilla still basked in her illusion of power. He knew the moment had come for the truth to be revealed. No more complaints or petty arguments. William was ready to enter the royal council with an entirely different stance. He was not only going to demand justice for his wife, he was prepared to perform a necessary surgery to excise the tumor of ambition threatening the House of Windsor. The decision to convene an emergency meeting of the Royal Council had been made, marking the irreversible turning point in this fateful confrontation. The Royal Council meeting room that day was submerged in a silence so profound it felt chilling. The pale golden light from the antique chandeliers spilled onto the long oak table, where the most powerful figures of the monarchy sat motionless like statues. Prince William entered, no longer carrying his usual scholarly air, but radiating the cold authority of a true regent. He placed the thick dossier onto the table, a dry, sharp sound that signaled the end of an era of concealment. Queen Camilla sat opposite him, her hands tightly clasped on her lap. She maintained a calm expression, but her rapid breathing and the slight twitch at the corner of her mouth betrayed the turmoil within. When William began to speak, not with loud accusations, but with irrefutable evidence, each page he turned was like a knife peeling away the perfect shell she had built. The proof of document manipulation, the isolation of Catherine, and the schemes to smear her reputation were all laid bare under the light of justice. Camilla's emotions shifted from confidence to shock, then complete collapse as she realized every web she had spun had been firmly caught in William's grasp. Under the cold stares of the council members, people she once believed were under her control, Camilla felt utter isolation. With no king to shield her and no queenly power left to command respect, she was reduced to nothing more than a woman caught red-handed in petty schemes. Finally, under the suffocating pressure of the truth, she was forced to bow her head and offer an official apology in a trembling voice, admitting her mistakes, which she described as excessive protectiveness. But William was not there to accept empty words. His decision was absolute and merciless. Camilla was permanently stripped of all authority within the royal council and ordered to leave the palace to live in her private residence, far from the political heart of London. It was an unofficial sentence of exile, the final full stop on the ambitions of a woman who had spent her entire life clawing her way to the top. The aftermath of the incident brought a powerful purge. Those who had aided her were gradually removed, making way for the restoration of older values. Catherine, though carrying deep emotional scars from the period of siege, began to reappear. Without any loud declarations, she demonstrated her strength through quiet composure and discreet forgiveness. She returned to her charitable work with a smile that held less anxiety, though her eyes now carried greater depth after the storm. William stood beside his wife, affirming his role as the ultimate protector of both family and the monarchy's future. He was no longer the prince standing in his father's shadow, but had become the strongest pillar of the House of Windsor. While Camilla quietly packed her final personal belongings and left the palace under the cold indifference of the stone corridors, on the other side, sunlight began to pierce through the fog, illuminating the path that William and Catherine would walk together. The royal shockwave ended not with compromise, but with the establishment of a new order. Justice had been served, Catherine's honor restored, and the British monarchy entered a new chapter under the fierce protection of its heir, leaving behind the schemes and shadows of a turbulent period. After finishing the story, in your opinion, is Prince William's tough and somewhat cold decision at the end a fitting punishment for Camilla's schemes? Or does it unintentionally reveal a new and frightening side of power within the royal family? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.